CBS News is taking a huge risk. It's overhauling 60 Minutes, the most popular news magazine on TV. And it's bringing in a brand new executive producer, Nick Bilton, to run the show. I talked with Bilton about his vision. He said he was recruited by editor-in-chief Barry Weiss, who took over CBS News last fall. Weiss wants Bilton to bring new ideas, new energy, and new digital forms of storytelling to 60 Minutes. Bilton said that the core of the show, the idea of a 12 or 13-minute long mini documentary about the news, he said that part's not going to change. He said, quote, the core of 60 will remain 60. But beyond the Sunday night broadcasts, quote, we will be reaching audiences in places that they need to be reached. In other words, less horizontal video, more vertical video like this. Now, I used to work with Bilton at the New York Times. I know he's been a tech reporter and a futurist, always thinking about where media is going. He's a provocative pick for the job. But like I said, it's a big risk to blow up this profitable show. On Thursday, the current head of 60 Minutes, Tanya Simon, was removed, and 2 correspondents were fired as well. And some staffers are worried about possible political motivations. President Trump has been vocal about 60 Minutes, but Bilton doesn't have a political identity. He has written critically about Trump in the past. When I asked him, quote, will you shy away from aggressive coverage of the Trump administration? He said, absolutely not. The ratings are still high on TV, but Bilton told me ratings are a lagging indicator. The show's current strength is all the more reason to rebuild and reinvent it now from a position of strength. Weiss and Bilton told colleagues, quote, if you don't disrupt yourself, you will get disrupted.
We got to talk about some nightmare news for CNN family, because according to a bombshell report, the same woman who's already been cleaning house over at CBS News is now being positioned to walk through CNN's front door and do the exact same thing here. Her name is Barry Weiss, and if this merger goes through, she could be overseeing editorial operations at both networks at the same time. Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your post notifications. Now let's get into this, right? So here's the basic setup, because there are a few moving pieces, and I want to make sure we're all on the same page before we go further. Paramount, the company that owns CBS News, is currently in talks to purchase Warner Bros. Discovery, and Warner Bros. Discovery is the company that owns CNN. So if that deal closes, one company controls both of those newsrooms, and when one company controls both newsrooms, one person gets to decide the editorial direction of both. That person, according to the reporting, is Barry Weiss. Now, David Ellison is the man behind all of this. He runs Paramount Skydance. He's the one who put Barry Weiss in charge of CBS News last fall. And he's the one driving this whole potential CNN move. So when you're trying to understand why this is happening, start with Ellison. He's the engine. Now, who is Barry Weiss in plain English? She was an opinion writer at the New York Times. She left the Times in 2020, publicly claiming the paper had a bias problem and that she couldn't do her job in that environment. After she left, she started her own publication called The Free Press. Then, after the Paramount Skydance merger closed, Ellison installed her as an editor-in-chief of CBS News. No prior television experience, never ran a broadcast news organization before in her life, and that's important context, and we'll get back to it. But I want you guys to keep that in mind as I play the next clip, okay?
Since being named CBS News' editor-in-chief in October, Barry Weiss has turned the network into a soft MAGA mouthpiece, or a Fox News light, if you will. It's a shift so dramatic and so worrying that its evening news show lost more than 1 million viewers in its first week with her newly appointed anchor. From softball interviews with Donald Trump and top administration officials to pushing ICE propaganda online about Renee Good, Barry Weiss has unraveled any last bit of trust in that network. And if that isn't enough to make Walter Cronkite roll in his grave, just take a look at CBS's newest roster of contributors, which is a who's who of, at best, centrist pundits and at worst, right-wing hacks.
There is no debate. There is no discussion. It's very black and white. There's no gray area. Barry Weiss is destroying CBS. The Ellisons are destroying CBS. They're destroying 60 Minutes. They want it to be nothing but a propaganda factory for Donald Trump and billionaires and Israel. That's their mission. Anything else they tell you is complete and utter horseshit, ladies and gentlemen. And like I said, they are completely and utterly unfit to be in such a position.
I don't know, Ben. I really don't even know what the big blueprint that she has. Did she not tell you when she was trying to hire you? You're so good.
Barry Weiss reportedly tried to hire you. And what do you think of their strategy of trying to go after Fox's audience?
I don't know if that's the case. I mean, I think that they're trying to change their editorial viewpoint that maybe some people in the executive wing of that network thought was skewed one way, and they're trying to balance it. I don't know if you can say it's going after Fox audience as much as it's going after middle America that may get fed up about seeing stories one way or another. Look, when Fox started, I was in the Atlanta bureau. The Atlanta bureau started with a fax machine and a cell phone in my apartment. And, it began with this premise that there was an unserved population that felt that the media was not covering everything that they wanted to cover. And the media who covered media said, this is never going to work. It's a niche audience. And it turned out that niche was half the country. And look, I'm the news side of that operation. And I think if CBS is trying to mimic Special Report, more power to.
So there you have it, right? When you seeing it, because a CBS News reporter sitting down with executive Barry Weiss brought in to overhaul 60 Minutes a guy named Nick Bilton, and what he said tells you everything about where this is all heading. If you don't disrupt yourself, you will get disrupted, right? Here's what that means in plain English. It means you either change on your own terms or someone changes you against your will. Bilton is saying the show's current ratings are strong, but ratings are a lagging indicator. By the time numbers fall off a cliff, it's already too late to fix it. So the overall is happening now from a position of strength before the audience disappears completely. Now, the liberal media has a completely different read on all of this, right? As you guys heard in this clip, they're calling David Ellison a MAGA billionaire, quote unquote. Yes, a MAGA billionaire. They're saying Barry Weiss has turned CBS News into a, quote, soft MAGA mouthpiece, quote unquote, and a Fox News light, quote unquote. They lost their minds when she came in, and they're losing them even harder now that CNN might be next. But think about it like this. CBS News has been bleeding viewers for years before Weiss showed up. CNN has been losing its audience for years too. So at some point you have to ask the honest question. Is this a political takeover, or is this a business making a change because the old model stopped working? From my perspective, when a product stops selling, the people who own it have every right to change the product. That's not a conspiracy. That's just how it works. And what that change actually looks like inside the newsroom, family, is where this story gets real. So let's talk about what actually been happening inside CBS since Weiss took over, because the firings have already started and the details matter. Tanya Simone, who was running 60 Minutes, got removed. 2 correspondents got fired alongside her. And then the biggest name fell, Scott Pelley. 37 years at CBS News gone. Now let me walk you through how that happened, because it wasn't one thing, it was months of tension building up. And then one room where it all came to a head. The CBS News president, Tom Tversky, sent Pelley a note asking him to come in for a meeting. Pelley said he'll be there. He walked in and Barry Weiss was already sitting in the room. And here's how Pelley described it himself with this whole experience.
You think Barry Weiss is going to get ousted? Do you think she'll get got?
Not yet.
No, because I feel like probably the board is all
right. I mean,
MAGA.
But you know what though? Actually, let me take that back. CBS is getting trounced in terms of ratings now.
They are,
right?
Yeah.
People who used to watch the evening news, the CBS, they're not anymore.
Wow.
I mean, I think people like seeing Tony DeCoppel in the morning, but they don't trust him as much in the evening for whatever reason.
That's so crazy.
But it happens all the time. Do you know what I mean? Like sometimes you see somebody, I'd rather see you sort of do morning TV, and for some reason when you're in the evening,
it's like fluffier. It's like less hard news. Yeah. I stopped watching Survivor.
Because?
It's on CBS.
Oh, I never watched Survivor.
Also, I didn't really feel like watching this season.
Okay.
This has been a very, very bad week for Barry Weiss. In fact, it doesn't seem like she has had a good week since taking over as the director of all of CBS's news organization. Obviously, with Scott Pelley being fired this week from 60 Minutes after multiple other higher-ups and personalities were also fired, Bari Weiss is in the hot seat. In fact, even before all this happened, reports were coming out saying that she was probably going to get fired soon because CBS News ratings are lower than ever. I mean, CBS would probably have to go back to the age of radio to find fewer viewers or listeners than they have today. That's how bad Bari Weiss has been. But new reports have come out showing that it's so much worse than any of us thought.
He said Weiss was, and I'm quoting here, murdering 60 Minutes.
Senior staff wiped out after a triumphal year. Our very best correspondents summarily fired for no stated reason. The president of CBS News, Tom Sabrowski, sent me a note and said, "Can you come by and talk to us?" And I said, "Absolutely." I walk in the door and I see Bari Weiss is sitting in there, and I think, this is terrific of her. She's come to this meeting. Before I could take my seat, Tom Sabrowski said, "This is a firing offense." And they were unhappy about the meeting that had occurred, a meeting that had ended in thunderous applause for me because somebody had stood up for the broadcast. I turned to Bari Weiss, who was sitting to my left, and I said, "Let's talk about the firings. Why were the firings necessary?" I'm not answering that question. Not long after that, the email came through and said that I'd been fired. The people running CBS News will not be questioned. Lawsuit against 60 Minutes caused a great deal of concern in 60 Minutes. Paying the bribe broke our hearts, but they did it to get the sale through. My colleagues and I thought, great, that's behind us. We have bright new leadership, financial resources. We're in better shape than we were before.
Bari Weiss is a former opinion writer at the New York Times who left there in a blaze of glory, claiming that was bias at the New York Times, and started her own publication called The Free Press. After the Paramount Skydance merger, David Ellison installed her as editor-in-chief of CBS News. Now, she has zero television running experience. She has never run a broadcast news organization, never managed a global news operation in her life. And Scott Pelley, 37 years at CBS News. Now, let me tell you what led Scott Pelley to that room. Because it was not one thing. It was months of watching colleagues fired for refusing to bend. It started in December when Weiss pulled Sharon Alfonsi's story about Trump's deportation policies at the El Salvador prison, CICAT. This show had gone through standards and practices. She said it needed a comment from a Trump administration official. The administration, Bari Weiss, reportedly had already declined to participate. And Alfonsi sent an email to her colleagues that said everything. She wrote, "If the administration's refusal to participate becomes a valid reason to spike a story, we have effectively handed them a kill switch for any reporting they find inconvenient."
Before he could even take his seat, Sabrowski told him this is a firing offense. That's what Sabrowski told, Scott Pelley. And what was the offense? Pelley had held a staff meeting, and in that meeting, people applauded him for, in his words, quote unquote, as you heard it, standing up for the broadcast. That's what Scott Pelley has said, right? Then management saw that as an insubordination. A senior journalist rallied in the room against new leadership, and that was enough. Now, Pelley framed it as the people running CBS News refusing to be questioned. You guys heard. And I hear that. I do. When you're giving 37 years to something and you feel like it's being taken away from you, that emotion is real and it's valid. But here's the other side of it. And I want to be fair before I give my take. The tension that led to all of this didn't start with the applause in that meeting room. It started in December when Weiss pulled a story from correspondent Sharon Alfonsi about Trump's deportation policies, a prison in El Salvador. The story had already cleared standards and practices, but Weiss said it needed a comment from a Trump administration official before it aired. The administration had already declined to participate, and Alfonsi sent an email to her colleagues that a lot of people have quoted since. She wrote, and I quote, "If the administration's refusal to participate becomes a valid reason to spike a story, we have effectively handed them a kill switch for any reporting they find inconvenient." Now, that argument sounds serious on the surface, and I get why journalists rallied around it, but think about it like this. You are a reporter. you're about to air a story that directly involves the federal government. You reach out for their side, they say no, and your editor says, we need their comment before we run this. Is that censorship or is that journalism? Getting both sides before you go to air used to be the baseline, right? It wasn't a favor to the administration, it was the job. The thing nobody wants to say out loud is this. These journalists aren't being fired for doing great work. They're being fired for refusing to even try to look neutral and just give the facts and letting the American people decide as they inform with the truth. Just inform the American people with the truth. And there's a difference. And that difference is exactly why viewers stop trusting these networks in the first place. Right? So let's get into this article a little bit. CBS News boss Barry Wise posed to oversee CNN editorial operations report. You imagine how Abby Phillips on, CNN and them are feeling right now? Oof. CNN boss, CBS News boss Barry Wise is likely to gain editorial oversight over CNN if and when Paramount Skydance's acquisition of Warner Bros. Discovery is approved, according to a report. Paramount executives are said to have held preliminary discussions with several candidates who will come in and run the business side operations next to Wise while she continues to oversee editorial. The company is considering several big names, including current CNN CEO Mark Thompson, NBC Universal News Group Chairman Caesar Conde, and former NBC News Chief Noah Axios reported. Bryn Sharway, currently CEO of Daily Beast, and former CBS News President David Rhodes are also under consideration, according to the report. The search implies that once the merger goes through, Wise will also be put in charge of CNN's editorial operations, Axios said. A CNN spokesperson declined to comment. The Post has sought comment from Opahim, Sherwood, and NBC News. A spokesperson of Raj declined to comment. All 5 candidates have extensive experience running large news organizations that contrast with Wise, whose background is in print and digital journalism rather than television news management. Under the current org chart, Tom Sabursky is president of CBS News. He reports to Paramount Television Chief George Cheeks, while Wise reports directly to Paramount Skydance CEO David Ellison. Last month, Puck News reported that Paramount executives began informal discussions about scaling back Wise's role and bringing in a more experienced hand to manage the business side of both CBS News and CNN. According to Puck, the executive will be brought in to allow Wise to focus on scaling the company's digital operations. A Paramount spokesperson denied the report. According to Axios, Ellison couldn't be more pleased with Wise's performance thus far. As I quote, "The Paramount brass loves Barry Wise," a source told the news site. "She has full confidence of David Ellison, who believes Barry has done a fantastic job as editor-in-chief." The source told Axios that Barry has been involved with identifying people she would partner with on the business side. The prospect Wise overseeing editorial operations across both CBS News and CNN will represent a remarkable expansion of her influence less than a year after she was brought in to run CBS News. Wise, 42, was installed as CBS News editor-in-chief after Ellison's media company Skydance merged with Paramount last year. Since taking over the helm of the Tiffany Network's news division, however, Wise has made changes that have ruffled feathers nowhere more visibly than at 60 Minutes, the long-running television news magazine. Last month, Wise fired the show's executive producer, Tanya Simone, and 2 correspondents, Sharon Alfonsi and Cecilia Vega. She then installed Nick Bilton, a tech reporter whose bylines appeared in Vanity Fair and the New York Times, as the show's new executive producer. Last week, Scott Pelley, the veteran 60 Minutes correspondent, was fired after he angrily confronted Bilton over the firings. The show's 3 remaining correspondents, Leslie Stahl, John Wortham, Bill Whitaker, announced that they will remain with the program. They thought they were critical of management's handling of the firings. Nobody's above the program, right, family? But however, when your audience feels, or your audience can feel that you already decided the story before you reported it, because this is what it all comes down to. They leave. And they did leave in large numbers for years. Scott Pelley has a real legacy. 37 years is real, but legacy doesn't protect you from accountability when the institution you work for is changing direction. That's true in any job, any newsroom, anywhere. So that's CBS. Now, let's talk about what happens when the same playbook lands at CNN, as we read together from this New York Post article here. Because this is where the story goes from interesting to depending on where you stand, right? Either a nightmare or long overdue. Axios reported that Paramount has held preliminary conversations with several candidates for a business side counterpart to Barry Wise, right? Someone who would manage operations across both CBS News and CNN. Which that means in plain English is this: if the Paramount Skydance deal with Warner Bros. Discovery closes, Wise would oversee all news editorial for both networks. One person, two of the biggest names in broadcast and cable news, same editorial vision, same expectations, same standards. She's already applying at CBS. And family, the reaction from the liberal media that I have showed you before I showed you the clip, sitting down with Scott Pelley here, as you guys can see with his suit on, being interviewed. I showed you the liberal media basically panicking, like no gray area, propaganda factory, murder in 60 minutes, quote unquote. All these three quotes that I mentioned. These are the takes coming out of people who, for years, had zero problem with CNN operating as a full-time opposition research firm dressed up as a news channel. Now that someone is coming in to change the editorial direction, suddenly it's the end of journalism as we know it. And I want you to think about something. When Fox News launched, the people who cover media for a living said it would never work. They called it a niche audience, right? Said there wasn't enough of a market for it. That niche turned out to be half the country, right? You heard what he said. As you guys see on the screen, Brett Baer said it best, right? The niche turned out to be half the country, as I showed you guys in this clip. Half, a massive audience of everyday people who felt like they existed in networks, weren't covering the things that mattered to them, weren't giving them a full picture, and weren't being straight with them. Fox filled that gap and built an empire doing it. Now you got CNN, a network that has been shedding viewers for years, not months, years. And the question isn't whether change is coming. The question is whether the people inside that building are willing to accept it before they lose what's left of their audience entirely. Because here's what change at CNN actually looks like if this goes through. Jake Tapper, Wolf Blitzer, Abby Phillip, the whole roster that built careers on a very specific kind of coverage, not being replaced because of personal grudges or political playback. Being replaced because the model they represent, activist journalism dressed up as neutral reporting, is what's being dismantled. It's not about the individuals. It's about what those roles stood for and what the new ownership wants those roles to be. From my perspective, this is not a left versus right story. I know people want to frame it that way. But at the core of this, what you're watching is a business that burned through its audience, lost the trust of a huge portion of the country, and is now under new ownership that's decided the old approach isn't worth keeping. You can agree with that or you can disagree with that. I'm not here to tell you what to think, but you can look at CNN's ratings trend. You can't look at CNN's ratings trend over the last several years and argue that what they were doing was working. The numbers don't support it. The audience already voted with the remote. And that brings us to the bigger lesson in all this, family. Think about the simplest version of what we just walked through. A news network tells you every single day, we're straight down the middle. We report, you decide. We're just giving you the facts, quote unquote, right? And then you watch the coverage year after year, and it becomes clear that's not what's happening. The stories they chose, the ones they skipped, the ones they frame, the way they frame things, the guests they book, it all points in one direction. Every time at some point the audience figures it out, not because someone told them, because they can feel it. And here's what this actually looks like in real life. Think about any job you ever had, any workplace. If you were hired to do one thing and you spend your time doing something else, eventually your employer is going to notice. Doesn't matter how long you've been there. It doesn't matter how good your reputation was when you started. The moment you stopped doing what you were hired to do and started running your own agenda on company time, accountability catches up, right? That's not politics. That's just how the trust works. The same principle applies to a pastor, a teacher, a coach, a news anchor. The platform you have isn't yours to keep forever. It's yours as long as you honor the responsibility that comes with it. The moment you use that platform to push your own angle while pretending you don't have one, you've broken the deal. And I want to be clear about something. I'm not telling you what to think about Barry Wise. Whether you believe she's the right person for this job, whether you think the whole thing is a political play, whether you're rooting for this or dreading it, That's your call to make. But the bigger issue doesn't go away regardless of how you feel about her personally. These networks call themselves neutrals for years. They called themselves neutral. The audience stopped believing it. The ratings showed the exit, and now the people who own these properties are making changes. That's the story. Everything else is noise. Proverbs chapter 19, verse 9 says, a false witness will not go unpunished, and whoever pours out lies will perish. And I'm not saying every person at CNN or CBS is a liar. Some of these journalists genuinely believe in what they're doing, but the broader institution, the brand, the posture of neutrality that was never actually neutral, that version of things is getting punished right now in real time through lost viewers, lost trust, lost jobs, and lost control of the editorial direction entirely. The standard for truth telling doesn't shift depending on who's in the White House or who owns the network. It either holds or it doesn't. And when it doesn't hold for long enough, eventually someone with the power to demand it comes along and does exactly that. So here's the question I want to leave with you, family. Do you think CNN can actually be rebuilt in a network people trust again? Or has it been operating as an activist outlet for so long that the audience is permanently gone? Drop your answer in the comments. I will read every one of them. And make sure you hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on your post notifications so you never miss a breakdown. Spread the peace, love, and positivity. Let the love supersede the hate, family. I'll catch you next one on that No Family Peace.